This set of short stories was originally written by authors for Warhammer 40,000. They have been adapted for the Stellaris universe. Full details of the stories and the authors can be found in the video description. My lords, first we will hear an account of the defence of Olympia from Captain Reno. The system's defensive fleets had been swept aside by the Scourge, and the captain was on the planet defending the planetary shield generators on the front line of the ground assault. I was looking down the barrel of my rifle. I knew I mustn't show any fear in front of the men. I couldn't see anything yet, but that didn't make me feel any better. Worse, in fact. I knew the aliens were out there. We had watched as millions of spores dropped from space and turned day into night. The sky had burned with fire from our air defensive laser batteries, but the massive guns couldn't hope to bring down all of them. The sun was low, and the ground covered in thick snow. You had to squint against the glare of the sunlight in order to make sure you didn't go snowblind. I checked left and right along our position. Thousands of fellow Defence Force auxiliary troops manned the firing steps on the trenches. Our position had been greatly bolstered. A fighting force larger than I have ever witnessed stood here shoulder to shoulder in the trenches. Ranks upon ranks of men from the mighty clone legions, vat-born soldiers from the depths of Alpha Centauri's hives had come to aid us. Adding to their number were the addition of Cybrex warforms, great hulking machines remade from a long-dead empire, but perhaps the greatest of all was the presence of our empire's most mighty veterans. Genetically enhanced soldiers from Earth, designed and built to be walking gods. I felt immensely proud to be fighting alongside them. Surely whatever was coming could not stand before such legendary warriors. How little I knew. The ground shook as the warforms shifted position, bracing their legs into a firing stance. The enormous machines must have seen something I could not. The air around them shimmered. Their void shields powered up and the huge weapons that they wielded locked into place. I peered out onto the ice plains again, and in the distance saw the swarm for the first time. On the horizon I saw a shifting, blurred motion. A swarm of creatures, too numerous to count, speeding across the ice field towards us. A terrifying, buzzing, skittering noise came from the approaching horde, intense and grating on the nerves. I grabbed a pair of binoculars from Trooper Park and trained them on the horizon, zooming in on the massive creatures approaching. I'm not ashamed to say my heart skipped a beat as I saw the horrors that scuttled, leapt, and thundered their way towards us. Beasts that defied any classification of form swarmed forwards, stretching as far as the eye could see in all directions. Shadowy forms lost in a haze of ice crystals came after the smaller creatures. Massively built, with scything legs and jaws as big as dropships. A suffocating fear rose inside me, paralyzing my limbs and turning my blood to ice. It seemed to me that there is no way that we could fight these creatures. Nobody could stand against these numbers. I had to get away. Then, from amongst the lines of the Defence Auxilia, a veteran soldier, as if sensing the beginnings of panic among us, began to sing a battle hymn from our ancient human empire, in a loud, clear voice. Amplified by his suit, his voice carried across the trenches, and along the line soldiers began to join in. Like water poured on a fire, the panic was quickly quelled. A resolute determination filled me, and I could feel it spread to all the men of Olympus who stood shoulder to shoulder in the trenches with me. A deafening salvo went off above me. Shells and rockets shrieked overhead and impacted square into the center of the alien horde, throwing up great chunks of ice and broken alien bodies. The whole swarm was momentarily obscured as every warform and every artillery piece we had fired and engulfed the aliens in fire and smoke. A great cheer went up from the line, that died just as quickly as the aliens came on, undaunted and apparently undiminished. Heavy weapons fire tore huge holes in the alien charge, and as they closed into range, I shouldered my rifle. Watching the range counter on my rifle scope unwind impossibly quickly, the numbers flashed green, and I pulled the trigger, burning a hole in one of the smaller aliens. But their speed was unbelievable. I only managed to fire about 3 shots before they smashed into the line. Then they were amongst us, in the trenches, sickle-armed beasts with sinewy arms, slicing and eviscerating, six-limbed creatures with slashing sword-like claws and whips. Some crackled with raw purple energy, shark-faced living battering rams with giant razor claws and screaming roars. Blood splashed brightly on the snow. Armor was cut through like paper, and men ran insane with fear. The sky darkened with drooling creatures borne aloft on leathery wings, vomiting corrosive gobs of acidic fire. I fought with my bayonet, hacking and killing. A snarling creature came at me, slashing with razor-sharp claws like scythes. I desperately parried and stumbled backwards, falling onto the trench floor. The beast hissed, ready to pounce and disembowel me. Powerful muscles uncoiled as it launched itself at me. I screamed, thinking that this was my time to die, when a swipe from a genetically enhanced warrior chopped the creature clean in two. Its severed thorax slammed into my chest, still trying to bite me. I pushed the bloody mess away, repulsed beyond words. The warrior who saved me dragged me to my feet and thrust me back towards the firing step and moved on, firing his weapon into the aliens. I was terrified, but damn it, I'm a soldier of the Imperium, and began firing once more. Soon I established a rhythm, firing until the rifle was empty, then slamming a fresh clip in and repeating the process. Wave after wave of the aliens broke themselves against our defences, and for how long we fought I honestly couldn't say. My vision blurred with fatigue and snowblindness, but it didn't matter. There were simply too many aliens to miss. I fired mechanically, any sense of my surroundings dulled by sheer terror. And suddenly it was over. Hissing with defiance, the aliens pulled back out of our weapons range, leaving huge mounds of corpses piled high against the defensive line. A great cheer went up from our troops, a cheer that had not come from a sense of victory, but the simple elation of surviving. A wailing siren from the base's loudspeakers sounded the fallback signal. As I cast my gaze around the trenches, I fell to my knees, retching, overcome by the sheer scale of the slaughter. Thousands were dead, ripped to shreds, and huge gaps had been torn in our line. If the Scourge attacked this position again, there would be no way of holding it. I gathered up my remaining ammo and jogged to join the surviving defense troopers, streaming back to the secondary line of bunkers. As I ran, I vowed I would make these abominations pay a fearsome toll in blood for every meter they dared to advance. My lords, Captain Reno's account sadly ends there. I'm told the man was killed valiantly in battle not long after he made this report. Fortunately, Olympus was held. Strikeforce Gamma was able to retake the system and mop up the remaining Scourge. However, the wider battle continues. I bring report from Lieutenant Cage of the 13th Penal Legion regarding the defence of Deliverance, an outpost on the eastern rim of our empire. The tribesman stood on the crest of the hill leaning on his staff, and he looked out across the savannah. The rolling grassland stretched for miles in every direction, a yellow sea rippling gently in the wind, broken only by the occasional tree or rocky outcrop. The tribesman took out a red-coloured root from an animal skin pouch and began to chew on it. As he crushed the root between his teeth, he felt the juices spreading their effect throughout his body, loosening the ties between mortal flesh and spirit. His limbs began to go numb, and he felt his mind ready itself for the journey to the world of the gods. He looked up vaguely into the yellow sky, his gaze attracted by movement. From out of the heavens dropped a star, rapidly falling towards him, straight as an arrow, towards the ridge he stood on. This was an omen, but the tribesman was not sure whether it was of good or evil. For almost 100 heartbeats, the tribesman watched the object growing larger and larger, until it impacted into the ground at the base of the hill in a shower of mud and dust. It looked like a gigantic egg made of thick, leathery skin and bone. The tribesman stood dumbfounded as the egg cracked open, its upper half peeling apart like a grotesque flower. There was a spray of purplish ichor, and a large, gangling shape flopped from the star egg onto the ground. The shape stood and stretched itself up to its full height, the fluids of its cocoon dripping from its body. It was over twice the height of the tribesman, and it stood on 2 thick legs as it unfolded 4 upper limbs, 2 of them wielding wicked-looking claws, easily the length of a man's height. Powerful muscle and sinew rippled under its dark skin. The tribesman's heart began to beat faster and faster, and he felt a cold sweat prickling across his body, making him shiver uncontrollably as the creature looked around, seemingly sniffing the air. With a sudden snap of its monstrous insectoid head, the beast fixed its hellish gaze on the tribesman, snaring him in its glaring red eyes. With a pace startling for its size, the star beast bounded up the slope, its forelimbs ripping at the earth to increase its speed. The tribesman found himself transfixed, unable to move or call for aid. He realized this must be one of the creatures from beyond the void which the newcomers had warned his people about, a predator from beyond the distant stars which had come to consume his soul. As the monster sped towards him, he felt something nagging at the back of his mind, and he realized he could hear a rumbling off to his right. He wanted to look, but he could not tear his eyes away from the demon of destruction racing towards him. The creature was only a few great strides away from him, its claws arching back to deliver a killing attack. Suddenly, without warning, a dazzling storm of light lashed into the void demon, blasting it, sprawling it to the ground, its limbs flailing wildly. Snapping out of the beast's hypnotic spell, he turned to see metal creatures advancing along the ridge, spitting fire at the monstrous intruder. The sky spirits had arrived to save him. The native just keeps on staring dumbly as we open fire. I guess that ain't surprising, considering that to these guys a simple mono-edged knife is a creation of the gods. Dumb locals. If they weren't so stupid, they'd be able to fend for themselves, and we wouldn't be here risking our necks to protect them. My attention is distracted away from the tribesman when the Pythorian creature gets back to its feet, and the tanks have to fire another volley into it. I ordered the rest of the platoon to take up firing positions, keeping up a steady stream of small rounds fire as we advance. The monster leaps towards Frank's squad, but even as it races towards them, hissing like some sort of damned cobra, they tear it apart with their rifles and heavy machine guns. It kind of collapses in on itself, those huge killing claws folding over its body. I walk up to the corpse to make sure it's truly dead. You can never tell with these fracking Pythorians. Some of them have got powers of regeneration you wouldn't believe. Its dark blood is splattered all over the grass, and it certainly looks like a corpse. To make sure, I level my pistol at its head and fire 6 shots into its fleshy corpse. Okay, I call out to my platoon. Mount up, move on. Some of them begin to walk back to the armoured transports, but Frank and some of the others walk over to where I'm standing. It's Letty who speaks first. We've been thinking, Cage, we've got the perfect opportunity here. I mean, we've got a great chance to get the hell out of this fragging outfit once and for all. I look at them, not knowing what they mean. What have you got in mind, I ask. Well, Frank says it's only 2 leagues to the jungle. The Colonel would never find us in there, and there's plenty of food to forage. There's shelter, and everything we need to survive. We just have to turn the transport south and we'll be free men again. Letty's eyes are intense now, beneath her thick curls of hair. She takes another step forward. Think of it, she continues. No more penal legion. No more fragging suicide missions for the Colonel. No more spending every minute wondering which of 1,000 kinds of hell we're going to end up in next. Free men, Lieutenant. Free men. I can hardly believe it. I've been fighting with Frank for a year, and Letty has been with the 13th for twice as long as I have. Like me, all these men and women were thrown out of their regular units for breaking the regular army's rules in a big way, and as such have been blessed to serve the rest of their lives in this penal legion. We've walked across a dozen battlefields together in the worst fighting you can imagine. We've been through it all. Suicide assaults, rearguard actions, and any other no-hope situation you can think of. It takes a lot more than guts and sheer brawn to survive for that long, and I can't believe they're being so stupid now. What kind of fragging scheme is that, I snap, as their jaws drop. Frank starts getting angry, and I can see the blood rushing to his face. He's going to start trouble if I don't do something right now. Look, boys, I say, trying to calm them down. You haven't thought this through, really. There's a Pythorian fleet up there in orbit, packed full of specially evolved killing machines, all hungering to eat you up as soon as look at you. The only reason the sky isn't full of them yet is because we managed to pick off the scouts before they found Deliverance, so they ain't sure where to commit their forces. But it's just a stalling action, because we can't get them all. No way. And even if we could, as soon as they find out there's a relief force en route, every bioengineered little fragger they've got is going to come down onto the planet and try and eat us. So the way I see it, you've got two choices. There's your plan, which means hanging around in the open. Oh, I know it's the jungle, but they'll still find you when they come. And what kind of chance are you going to have? Or you can come back to me and Deliverance, where there's a big wall to hide behind, 300 more of us, the Sisters of the Shroud Coven, and 2,000 natives to help us fight. Your choice, but if you ain't going my way, I'm going to have to insist you go on foot. The Colonel would skin me if I let you take the transports. It's only midday, so you've got about 8 hours walking until sundown. Plenty of time for you to hole up and wait for the damn Pythorian to come. I see the realization dawning on their faces, like the sun breaking out from behind a cloud. I thought I taught them better than this, but it just goes to show that some people never learn anything unless they get taught the hard way. Unfortunately, when you're in the penal legions, most people who learn the hard way end up as food for the worms. They don't say anything, they just turn around and start walking back to the transports. I take one last look at the Pythorian corpse just to be safe. It's strange, because any other type of cadaver would be crawling with flesh bugs on this damn planet by now, and there'd be a flock of carrion birds circling overhead. But there's nothing. Not even the bugs will touch the Pythorians. Frag, of all the things in this galaxy, those fraggers make my skin crawl the most. So we finish the fire sweep and I'm back in Deliverance, debriefing with the Colonel in the central keep. I can see the rest of the missionary station out of the window. The mid-afternoon sun is blazing down fiercely. Deliverance is not big, little more than a large village really, only half a mile across with a large central compound, some scattered buildings and the keep itself. I can see the men walking sentry duty on the outer wall, and even at this distance I reckon I can feel their tension. Cage, the Colonel barks, and I snap back from my daydream. There is him, myself, and 2 other lieutenants, Green and Jackson. As I was saying, the Colonel continues pointedly, we've had contact with the relief force. They are no more than 2 days away. If we can hold for just 48 hours, then there'll be a fresh strike force of battleships and 2 whole regiments of clone troops here to relieve us. The wall should be fairly straightforward to defend. It's 18 feet high, so we just have to worry about their runners leaping straight up it. The others we can pick off as they climb the walls. That leaves only the gate, but that's flanked by 2 towers with fixed kinetic batteries, and we can park a tank behind the gates that should make it harder to force them open. Any questions? Jackson paces nervously and wipes a hand through the thin hair plastered across his scalp. He's a skinny man, kind of jittery in my experience. Heaven knows how he had the guts to order his squad to incinerate a Voltum temple after stealing the artifacts inside. The Imperium takes the galaxy's history extremely seriously after all. Perhaps it's more of a surprise that the man did not end up with his head on a pole and his entrails decorating the road. What about the flyers, sir? Jackson asks. Not a problem, the Colonel responds, ice cold as usual. As calm as if we weren't going to be fighting for our damn lives in a few hours, perhaps even a few days. As always, he's wearing full dress uniform, clean shaven like he was fresh out of the barracks. He's a big man, physically I mean, but there's more to him than that. Those cold blue eyes and his own force of will make him seem twice as tall as anyone. I wouldn't call it charisma because he's reserved and surly. He just has this sheer presence that fills the room. We have 2 flak cannons on the gate turrets, and this keep has 4-point defense emplacements. If anything tries flying over the wall, we will have the firepower to gun it down. In any case, Cage and his platoon are acting as the mobile reserve behind the walls. If the Pythorian break through at the wall or the gates, or we get some unexpected visitors dropping in, Cage will move in and bolster the defense. Anything else? The Colonel asks. A glance out of the window again, I see the sunlight glittering off highly polished armour, which makes me think of something else. The Sisters, the Shroud Coven, what's the detail there? I asked, already knowing the answer. The Sisters are under their own authority and we have no direct control over their actions. I've spoken to the Sister in charge and outlined the plan, and I'm sure they'll play their part. The same applies to the levies. They'll be manning the walls and we will concentrate our guns around the gatehouse. That is where the fighting will be the fiercest. If you need me, that is where you'll find me. No surprise there then. The Colonel is always in the roughest of the fighting, and he always walks out alive. Frag knows what makes him do it. After all, we're here because we done wrong and got caught, but him, what did he do wrong? I mean, what kind of man would choose to lead a penal legion? What kind of mind do you need to walk into so many situations where you must be blessed by one of the gods to ever take another breath again, and then march straight out and into the next one? He must be mad. I mean, seriously insane. They say he spends his time aboard ship practicing ways to kill himself in the event that he's wounded or captured. I take it back about the Pythorians. There are some things which are a hell of a lot more scary because they're in human form. That's what they say he is, the devil in human form. And when he's ready for a fight like he is now, and you can look into his eyes like I'm doing now, you can believe it. It's about noon the day after and the Pythorian have found us. Maybe a scout slipped through the net, which wouldn't be surprising considering that for big brutes they can be real sneaky. They can sniff you out 10 miles downwind and they're covered in scales which shift colours so that you can't see them. Or maybe they just got fed up with waiting and decided to come down and get us wherever we are. I stood on the wall last night and watched the spores coming down. A scary sight, believe me. It was like 10 meteor storms all at once. These falling stars coming down, wave after wave of them. There's an old saying, if you see a shooting star, you can offer a prayer to the old gods of Earth and they'll grant your wish. Well, with all these flaming stars, that's one hell of a lot of prayers to be delivered. But I decided to use all of mine in one go for one big, huge prayer. Do you know what I prayed for? I prayed that those shooting stars would stop coming down. But they didn't, so I guess a murderer like me hasn't got the right to pray anymore. Which is why I'm here fighting, serving the Imperium in the only way I know. Being here in this missionary with all these priest types, it must be having an effect on me. I've always assumed that something's watching out for us, but I've always figured that those who can have to watch out for themselves, because there are others who can't watch out for themselves. Just like we're here to defend the tribespeople from the damn Pythorians because all they've got are crappy knives and spears and brave warrior hearts, which is all well and good if you're fighting amongst yourselves. But against the Scourge, it is going to be about as effective as trying to stop a Giga cannon by holding up your hands. But I guess, when you stand there for an hour and watch your doom come down out of the stars in a constant flow, it would be nice to know that this time, when it goes wrong, and you end up with your guts torn out or talons through your chest, it really ain't the end, and there is something waiting for you, and it wasn't a waste of time. I know I've got to ditch these morbid thoughts. I've got to stay sharp. Otherwise, this is going to be my final trip with the Legion. It's hard though, so hard, because I was there on Olympia. I saw what they can do to a world, how they fight. There were 6,000 men and women in our Legion back then, less than 500 of us made it out. The regular troops I heard lost over 1 million men defending Olympia, not to mention the staggering numbers of clones that fell. There were Cybrex warforms, and even the genetically enhanced legends from Earth. All those guns, all those men and women, and we only just won the fight. So much blood. I don't have nightmares anymore, but if there's one thing that would give me nightmares, it's the Pythorians. They're just so different to us. Even the Blorg fight for territory and conquest. But the Pythorians, they just consume everything, like they're here to wipe out every single living thing in the galaxy, and they'll never stop until that's complete. Which is why I stood up on the wall last night in the freezing wind. You'd never guess that it could be so hot in the day and yet so cold in the night. Watching them coming down, watching my doom come. Because I've got a seriously bad feeling about this one. The hairs on my neck prickle constantly, and I feel like I'm dead already. It is just my body that has yet to catch up with the plan. Which is why I'm standing here, hoping there really is something out there that listens to our prayers and comes to our aid. But I can't count on that, which is why I'm here now, as the sun starts dipping towards the jungle, ready to fight like I have never fought before, ready to do anything I can, because death is stalking me across the plains. The sun was low on the horizon, and the main assault wave has hit the walls. They attack from that direction to blind us. The Colonel was right about the flying bugs. Our air defences were more than a match. About 100 of them came flying in, diving down towards the compound, before the flak cannons opened up, blowing them out of the sky. Some managed to get closer to the keep, but the point defense cannons whirred into life, firing high explosive shells into the massive creatures, blasting them apart. That was horrible. Pieces of bloodied and charred meat dropping down on you like obscene hailstones from some sort of nightmare. No time to clear up the mess though, because the rest of the swarm had just arrived. It's hard to tell what's going on from back here, where we are in reserve, a couple of 100 paces from the wall. We've cleared a killing zone, demolishing the buildings inside the perimeter and using them to make an internal embankment around the keep, so if the Pythorians do get inside, we've got a second firing line. Most of the action seems to be going off around the gatehouse, just like the Colonel said it would. The men are 3 ranks deep on the wall on the south side, while the sisters are holding the west wall. There's about half as many sisters as there are penal troops, but they seem to be holding out better than we are. Then again, give me plasma rifles, armour and personal shields, and I'll show you just how mean and nasty I can get. It's been about a quarter of an hour since the attack began, when the Scourge get their first breakthrough. I'm watching the eastern end of the southern wall when I see a horde of bugs running around, and I realise there's no one up that end anymore. Okay squad, it's time to die, I bellow as usual, and then we're running across the killing ground towards the wall, fast as we can. The gunners in the tanks take the hint, and suddenly the air is filled with autocannon fire. High caliber explosive rounds directed at the swarm. 30 heart-pounding seconds later, and we're leaping up the steps, snapping off shots with our rifles as we close in. The supporting fire from the tanks falls quiet as we reach the top, and suddenly I'm surrounded by creatures. I see one of them is levelling its gun at me and just manage to take it down before it can fire. All of a sudden they charge us, and I rip my sword from my belt, thumb the activation rune, and hear the hiss of power as it sparks into life. The Scourge bugs are biting and clawing everything in their path, and I'd swear they were mindless if it wasn't for the coordinated fashion of their attack. As they sweep around me, I feel like I'm going to get washed away in the wave, and panic hits me. Bile rising out of my stomach as I see the fangs and the nightmarish faces all around me. One of the beasts jumps at me, its 4 upper limbs drawn back ready to attack, but I bring my sword around and the blade crashes through its carapace, sending thick alien blood splattering across my face. It tastes foul and I'm almost sick with the stench of it. I put a shot through the bulbous head of another one, and then something hits me hard in the back. This thing is latched onto me and I can't get at it, its claws scrabbling away at my flak jacket. I hear the material tearing away, and I feel its hot breath on my neck and pointed tongue slithering over the back of my head. Its jaws latch onto my shoulder, and I try to angle my pistol round for a shot, desperately trying to get this beast off me, because I don't want to be killed by some damn little rump bug. I'm not going to go like this. Not like this. Before it gets a killing blow, Johnson appears, one of Frank's squad, his bayonet stabbing deep into the fleshy parts of the beast, and I feel it let go and drop to the floor. There's no time to thank him though, as he gets thrown to the ground, half his face ripped off by a vicious claw. The creature is hunched over him, all 6 limbs on the ground ready to spring, and its red eyes turn to look up at me. I shoot its legs from beneath it, and then drive my sword into its soft, unprotected belly. Johnson is screaming, wailing his head off, but there's no time to give him peace, no rest for the wicked as they say. We push them back, inch by bloody inch, to the edge of the wall. I see Frank pick up one of them and hurl it over the parapet, its limbs and tail still flailing around even as it plummets to its death. I look over the edge of the wall and see how they manage to get up. A pile of their bodies stretches almost 2/3 of the way up the wall, almost 10 feet high, body upon body upon body, creating a ramp of corpses for the others to run up. Grenades, blow those bodies away from the wall, I shout, as I dodge aside to avoid a barbed tail lashing towards my throat. The others heard me though, and they're all tossing grenades over the wall, trying to dislodge the fleshy corpse pile. I see Marshall standing atop the wall, gripping his rifle by the barrel and swinging it from side to side like a club, battering away at the bugs as they scuttle up the wall towards us. The grenades finally go off, sending bits of torn flesh flying, and then something gives. The pile of bodies slides out along the wall, falling to the ground, leaving smears of blood along the concrete. Then the beasts are falling back away from the wall, but it's not over yet. There's something coming at us, real fast. With long, flea-like leaps and bounds, 6-limbed creatures power towards us, almost flying over the litter of corpses leading up to the wall. We're trying to shoot as many of them as possible as they close in, but there's still 20, maybe 30 of them when they get to the base of the wall. They hold there for half a heartbeat, bunching those powerful leg muscles, and then they spring up, clearing the wall by a good 2 or 3 feet, those 4 deadly dagger talons jabbing out. One of them punches its talon into Marshall's shoulder, and he grabs its arm in one hand, holding it close. He wraps his other arm around the throat of another as it tries to push past him, and throws himself off the wall, taking both with him. A serrated claw sweeps up towards my groin, but I manage to get there with my sword, lopping off the limb. My pistol scoring a hit through one of its glassy red eyes. The rest of the fight just blurs into a waking nightmare of hacking, slashing and stabbing, kicking and shooting, punching and screaming. Bestial faces, hot breath, flailing talons and ripping claws. Blood, filth and guts slick across the walkway. A constant fight until your arms are laden with fatigue and your brain can't process the information anymore. You're just fighting from instinct and nothing else. We manage to starve off the assault, and the Scourge fall back across the plain. A cheer starts up by the gatehouse and spreads along the wall. I let my men cheer along as well, although we've got little to celebrate. The shock of the close call is beginning to creep up on me, and I look around for something to do to keep my mind occupied. I'm not thinking about how close I came to going down this time. I see the Colonel striding towards me across the walkway. His face is grim as ever. I've never seen him break into a smile, not once. "Cage, clear the dead," he bellows. "I'm sending flamer teams to clear the front of the wall." Then he's gone again, issuing orders, getting the wounded divided into those that can fight and those that need to be given a soldier's grace. That's it. No thanks, no well done, Cage, you held the wall. Just orders, more work, and more fighting, and more dying to be done. I detailed some of my men to start throwing bodies over the parapet and see that the flamer teams are already at work, jets of fire turning the piles of corpses into ash and smoke. I leave them to their dirty work and seek out the Colonel. I find him outside of the keep talking to Nathaniel, the civilian administrator in charge of Deliverance, and they seem to be arguing about something. "These men need treating, you cannot make them fight again," Nathaniel's complaining. "If these men cannot fight, then they are dead. We need every single man we have for the walls," the Colonel replies in that low grating voice of his. It's the first time I've had a chance to get a proper look at him since the fighting began. His uniform is soaked in blood, alien and human, but none of it appears to be his. There's not a scratch on his skin, not a fracking scratch. My spine goes to ice and I try not to think about it. Nathaniel is still arguing, but the Colonel holds up his hand to stop him. "These men do not deserve your pity," he says, his eyes flashing. "They are thieves, murderers, looters, rapists, insubordinates and heretics. Everything you can conceive has been committed by at least one of the men here. More than that, they are traitors. They once served as free men in the great Imperial army, but they have betrayed the trust placed on them by the Empire and its citizens. They have broken the prescriptions of Imperial law with their selfishness, and I must punish them for it. Only the gods can judge us for our sins," argues Nathaniel. "And only in death can we receive their judgment," the Colonel completes. Nathaniel takes a long look at him and then turns away. "Remember, Nathaniel," the Colonel calls out after him. "Serve the Empire today, for tomorrow you may be dead." And then, for just an instant, a tiny fraction of a second, there's a ghost of a smile on the Colonel's lips, a minuscule hint of satisfaction, like he knows something the rest of the galaxy doesn't. "Cage," he calls after me, like he must have sensed I was there, beckoning me with a finger. "As I'm sure you know, that was just the first assault. I do not know when the next one will come, so stay ready. It is only an hour until the sun goes down, so I think they will wait until nightfall. I want you and your platoon to stay near the gate. This first attack was just to test our defences, to count our guns. They know we are most hard-pressed around the gate, so they'll throw their bulk of their forces there. We must hold the gate, Cage, otherwise it's all over. Stay close to the gate, but wait for my signal. Do not at any cost allow yourself to get drawn away from the gate. Is that clear?" "Perfectly, sir," I reply, as if I couldn't see the scenario for myself. This time we just face the smaller bugs, the expendable troops. Next time it will be much worse. They'll come at us with the warriors, hulking monsters twice as tall as a man and mean as frag. And maybe even the big bug herself, the Queen. "You have your orders, snap to it. I want clear fire for everyone in half an hour." Then he's off again, shouting for Green and Jackson. The Colonel was right, as I knew he would be. He's always so damn right. Nightfall comes sharply with no contact yet. It seems the Praetorians are waiting us out. I help Jackson's platoon rig up searchlights, scavenge from the tanks and get them set up upon the wall. The constant hum of portable generators fills the air, but listening won't do us any good, because the Scourge bugs can move as silent as you like when they want to. That's one of the scariest things about them. the silence. No battle cries, no war chants, just waves and waves of them sweeping towards you. When they're fighting, they hiss a lot, but I doubt they've got any real language to speak of. They're just animals, bugs, but they're well organised. They remind me of death ants I saw on Sirius back on the core worlds. They seem to know what each other were up to. Once one of them found you, the rest would come swarming in. Just like the scouts, finding prey for the rest of the swarm. So I'm up on the wall checking that everything is okay, when the searchlights finally blaze on. The stupid grunts start angling them as far away from the wall as they can, like they want to get the earliest warning possible. Which I can understand. The problem is, the light doesn't hit the ground before it's too weak to show anything. I grabbed the nearest one and pointed it further down, about 70 yards out. I catch a glimmer of movement and shout for the others to train their lights on that point. What I see makes my spine tingle with fear, a sensation I might add that I'm not all too familiar with, though far too familiar for my own liking. There's a big swarm of bugs out there, crawling through the grass on their bellies, sneaking real close. Behind them are crouched the warriors, big beasts twice as tall as a man. Their upper limbs evolved into a variety of deadly ranged and close combat weaponry. They're creeping forward, and the light glitters off their eyes, countless shining orbs reflecting back at me. Those eyes seem dead. There's no emotion, nothing, not even a touch of hunger, which is what you'd expect considering that the race devours whole planets. The only eyes I've seen colder than those are the white fire stares the Colonel gives you, and we all know he's not really human. Mark your targets, open fire, I bellow. And I see the men opening up first with missile launchers and autocannons, and then with volleys of rifle fire. As the bugs realise the game's up, they rise out of the grass and charge towards us. A wave of multi-limbed monstrosities intent on our destruction. I take one last look as they come streaming down over the plain, blossoms of fire exploding in their midst, their snarling faces lit up as hellfire rains down upon them. I jump down the steps, 3 at a time, to get back to my platoon. Right men, I tell them, stay steady, follow my lead, stay tight. If you get separated, they'll pick you off no problem. When you shoot, aim for the flesh. Your rifles will have as much effect on their carapace as punching a tank. Watch your ammo count too, cause tonight it's going to be a long haul, and I don't want to face those fracking bugs with my bare hands. One final thing, don't get yourselves killed, cause otherwise I'm going to have to put up with another fresh draft of no-hope meatbags. And if you let me go down, I'm sure as hell going to come back and haunt you for the rest of your miserable lives, reminding you what a bunch of fragging slack-jawed sons of Blorg you are. That gets a smile. Personally, I couldn't give a frag about these pre-battle speeches, but some of them really need it. I can tell, just like me, they're getting awful nervous. I mean, they're a bunch of hard-nosed, thick-skinned meatheads for the most part, but even when you've got nothing but air between your ears, you just can't get over the unreasoning horror that the Scourge brings out in you. It's not like they'll kill you, they devour you. They take everything you are, everything you were ever going to be, and they change it, pervert it into something else. It's a horrible thought, I don't mind telling you. The fire is still pretty steady from atop the wall, so I guess we're holding out alright. I give myself the luxury of watching the sisters for a while, fighting alongside the natives. It is a really bizarre scene, I can tell you. You have 2,000 or so of these tribal warriors hurling spears and firing bows, their skin glistening with sweat, their booming war chants echoing down from the wall. And then there are the sisters, dead silent, methodical machines almost, which given their distaste for AI, is ironic. They fire methodical bursts from their guns, salvo after salvo pouring into the darkness, every round sending a shriek of light into the shadows from its internal propellant. Then I see a group of the natives jumping in all directions, screaming like mad, clawing at their faces and chests. That would be an acid spitter. Fires some kind of explosive bug that sprays acid all over the place, burns through near anything given enough time, and against the exposed flesh of the native irregulars, it's utterly lethal. Dragging my eyes away from the scene, trying to turn a deaf ear to the agonized screeches, I watch what's happening around the gatehouse. It's hand-to-hand fighting now, and I pick out the Colonel, a glowing sword in one fist and an oversized pistol in the other. While the others are desperately hacking and slashing, he's just stepping to and fro, felling foes with every blow or shot as if the chaos wasn't going on around him. I see the shape of a warrior rise up behind him, but he just turns on the spot, fills its face full of bolts, and then chops its legs out from underneath it with 2 swings of the sword. Calm as you like, as if he was just taking a damn stroll in the morning. But he's so cold, it makes the sisters seem positively emotional. Then something appears towards the gatehouse that almost makes me swallow my tongue in terror. Silhouetted against the rising moon is the figure of the Queen. It's almost 3 times as tall as the men around it. 2 massive arms are moulded into some sort of ginormous living gun, while the other 2 are enormously wicked curved talons. A thick tail lashes between its legs, tipped with a sting the size of your arm. Mandibles that could snap a man in 2. It fires its cannon into the packed mass on the gatehouse, blasting apart guardsmen and Praetorians alike. Its head screeches back and lets loose a horrifying bellowed screech, which seems to roll along the wall like a wave, sending men staggering in fear, making them pause in their fight so that they're cut down with ease by the smaller bugs and the warriors they're fighting. The Queen steps down from the parapet, its hoof feet sending splinters of masonry flying as it stamps down with all its massive weight. Glancing around, it fixes its evil eyes on the colonel as he mustered the men for a counterattack. They charge in, rifle rounds bouncing harmlessly off the monster's armoured hide, the bayonet snapping against its mighty armoured plates. Then one giant talon sweeps down. An icy spray of blood fountains into the air as 4 men are cut down with a single blow. The thing lashes out again, tearing across the chest of another guardsman, his ragged corpse flung from the wall to land in a limp heap in the courtyard. Surely even the colonel has met his match. He's chopping his way through a mass of warriors to get to the Queen. There's a pause in the fighting as he glances to the ground outside. He stops for a moment and looks over to where I'm positioned, and with a wave of his arms he signals us to attack. "Here we go, squad," I shout, and then start heading to the wall. I've taken perhaps 5 steps when I realise something seems wrong. I realised I'm alone. I stop to look around at the men. They're all just standing there, looking up at the Queen as it butchers through another squad of men. "What the frack is this?" I howl, and I grab Sergeant Phoenix by his lapels and push him towards the wall, but he turned around and snarled at me. "This is madness," he shouts over the cries from the slaughter. "That fragging Queen, it's going to kill everyone. We've got to get the hell out of here while we can. Deliverance has fallen, Cage, face it." He calms down a little and fixes me with an intense stare. "There's nothing more we can do here. We've got to save ourselves. You ain't no fragging martyr, Cage, and you know it." He's right, but then something catches my eye over their heads. There are lights dropping down from the stars, carving down from orbit towards Deliverance in a long arc. I glance back at the gatehouse and I see the gate shuddering as some titanic beast tries to break in. I make a decision. "Look," I tell them, pointing up at the pinpricks of light falling from space. "There ain't no escaping Deliverance, boys. There's more bugs coming down. We're going to be surrounded, and there's no way we can get clear of the area before those things reach here." Cruz from Letty's squad opens his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "There ain't no getting out of this one, lads. We're all going to die in Deliverance. Now I see it 2 ways. You can die running from the fight like the thieves and cowards that everyone thinks we are. Sure, you can do that. Just get over the wall and hide out. But it won't take them long to find you. And when you're alone out there in the night, cowering in the grass, trying not to, a crash from the gatehouse distracts me, and I turn to have a look. The tank behind the gates is rocking heavily on its tracks now. It's going to be over any second, so I better make this quick. For frag's sake, we ain't got nothing worth fighting for now except our pride. Right now, I don't give a frag about the natives, or the Empire, or the Colonel, but what I do care about is how I'm going to die, and it ain't going to be with my back turned or down on my knees. I'm going to go down fighting like a man, and if there's any men here with me, then you better come too. Otherwise you boys can just go off running, dying on your bellies like the scum everyone thinks we are. I spit on the ground in front of them and then start walking towards the gate. I'm taking a hell of a risk, because if they don't follow me, I'm going to be standing in front of that gate on my own, when whatever it is that is so big and nasty, it can batter its way through 3 feet of neutronium armor to get to me. I hear the thud of boots and they form up around me, so I guess the suckers fell for it. I look up and see that the Queen has gone from the gate tower, but I can see the Colonel still slicing away with that big sword of his. God knows how the frag he managed that. If I live to see dawn, I might just find out. With the screech of tearing neutronium, the gates are torn apart and the tank gets shunted towards us. There's a sound like a train ramming a building, and the tank is flung upwards, spinning through the air. As it crashes down, its fuel goes up in a massive fireball that shoots 100 feet into the air. Through the flames and smoke, I see a sight that will follow me to my grave. Long may it be before I get there. Through the orange glow comes this huge Scourge creature. It must be 12 feet tall and easily just as wide. It's nothing I've ever seen or heard of before. It's got 4 massive talons arrayed like arms with the colossal bony extrusions across its shoulders. It's like some sort of living battering ram. Nestled between its immense shoulders, its head is fused with its chest, and its large fanged mouth locked open in a permanent roar. I think a Cybrex warform would be really handy about now. Pieces of twisted metal hanging from the spines as the creature stomps through the smoke and flames like some sort of monstrous devil from the pits of hell. Without a pause, it shoulders aside the wreck of the tank, and I'm horrified to see that some of the burning vehicle tears off along one of the creature's armoured plates. The debris carries on burning, the flames crawling along the beast's carapace, but it just keeps advancing steadily, as if nothing was happening. "Blow that fragger away," I shout, and everyone snaps out of the spell. Brandon opens up with the gamma laser cannon, a bolt of energy powerful enough to cripple a battle tank, scoring a wound across the beast's armoured skull. Thick, dark blood dribbled down the exoskeleton of its body. The autocannon in Frank's squad kicks in, explosive shells rippling across the beast's legs, but it still comes on, the ground shaking as those massive feet thud into the dirt. It pauses for a second, its beady eyes reflecting with the flickering flames, and fixes us with a stare. Its arms arch back, spreading wider than the length of a tank, and its carnivorous mouth opens to bellow a howl that can probably be heard off-world. The beast breaks into a run, gathering momentum. Rifle rounds, autocannon fire, and gamma laser cannon shots bounce off it as it lumbers towards us. Once more, it opens its fanged maw for another terrifying roar, but Brandon picks his moment precisely, his aim guided by the gods, I'm sure, and the next gamma laser shot lands inside the creature's mouth, smashing its head to a pulp, scattering fragments of skull across the courtyard. For a moment I think even that isn't enough to stop it, as it comes on rumbling towards us, but the rest of its body catches up with what's happening, and it slowly collapses to the ground, with dark, thick ichor oozing into a puddle around the mammoth's corpse. I breathe a sigh of relief, glad those useless fraggers decided to follow me after all. Otherwise I'd be a little more than a smear along those claws by now. Just as my heart rate drops to something below 1,000,000 beats a minute, the rest of the Scourge had started to push through the broken gate, and at the front is a group of warriors, acid spitters and virus cannons firing as they advance, men falling all around me. Acid splashes onto my arm, the pain is almost unbearable, and I stoop to grab a handful of dirt to rub the acid off. My right arm is almost numb, so I drop my pistol and grab my sword in my left hand. The lead warriors go down to fire from the gamma lasers and autocannons, but there's more and more of the things pouring through the breach now. I look around to see how the platoon is holding out, and I see that there's only about 24 of us left now. Frank catches my gaze, and I see his desperation turn into fierce pride in that single glance. It's as if a subconscious order is given. We all charge forward, throwing ourselves at the tide of beasts sweeping into Deliverance. My sword bites into alien flesh, and I hear an inhuman shriek of pain. I'm not really looking at what's happening, I'm just chopping left and right, hacking blindly, knowing that I can't miss in the press of alien creatures swirling around me. Then a massive claw comes out of the darkness, smashing me across the face. My head spins as I try to stagger backwards. I feel a sharp pain slicing across my thigh, and in my daze realise my blood is pouring down my leg and spilling into the dirt. I try to take another step, but all my strength seems to have been sapped out from me. I drop to my knees, feeling rough alien skin pushing past, leaving me for dead. And then a shadow descends over me, and I feel like I'm falling down a deep, dark hole. My ears pick up singing, my mind ringing to the sound of angelic voices, singing some holy hymn. So this is what it's like to die. There are gods after all. And I shall receive judgment just as the Colonel said I would. My thoughts are getting slow, but for the first time in 10 years of fighting, I feel proud. I didn't run this time. I stayed. I'm dying, but I went down fighting. Surely that has to count for something. I can hear voices shouting, orders being bellowed, so I guess I'm alive, and I was right about those falling lights. I try to open my eyes, but the left one seems closed up. I raise an arm, feeling incredibly weak, and touch my temple. Instant pain tells me there's a bruise the size of a small moon up there, and it's probably blood crusting up my eye. Through my good eye, I see troops running backwards and forwards, and I watch 3 heavy Annihilator pattern tanks warming up, ready to go out of the gate. I guess I'm propped up against the keep. I can feel the rough stonework poking into my back. I turn my head slowly left and right, wary of the dizziness and nausea, and I see that there's others like me, bandaged and bloodied all along the keep wall. The colonel walks past me, and he notices that I'm awake. He strides up and stands in front of me, thankfully blocking out the bright light of the sun. I can't see his face as it's in shadow, but he's looking down at me. "Still alive then, Cage?" he demands, his voice as rough as ever. "Guess I can't kick the habit yet, sir." I try and manage a smile, but my face is just a massive ball of ache and pain. "I heard what happened," he said, dropping down onto one knee so that I can look into those cold eyes as he stares at me. "Tell me, Cage, you could have run out on me. You had the chance and you have done it before. What made you fight?" I fixed him with my good eye, returning his gaze with a steady look of my own. "Well, sir, it's like this," I explain. "I saw the lights coming down and I knew that these were Imperial transports. The Pythorian spores just come straight down, whereas these had a curved trajectory, so I knew that relief was on its way and Deliverance would be saved. The thing is though, we had to hold out, because if the Scourge got into the compound, we'd all be dead. There's nowhere to run from those creatures." The colonel frowns at me. "So why did you tell your platoon that there were more spores coming down rather than the relief force?" "You must know why, sir," I replied. "Because it seems so obvious to me. If I had told them that help was on the way, they'd lose what little stomach they had left. They would think that they could give up and get away from here. But like I said, there wasn't any escape from Deliverance, not a chance. So I did the only thing I could. I stripped them of that false hope. I gave them nothing to live for except life itself. You see, sir, when you ain't got frag all worth fighting for, you'll still fight to be alive. Give a man a chance to back down and he'll take it, but give him nothing and he'll grab what he can with both hands and not let go for as long as he can. He'll fight his last breath just to take one more, to feel his heartbeat just one more time before he dies. If you stick a man in the middle of a fight and give him a gun, he'll fight like a cornered rat because there's nothing else he can do. That's the way the penal legions work. It's exactly what you do to us all. We ain't got no choice, but we fight and we fight good, because if we don't, we're all dead. None of us wants to die, so we all do what we can. Everything that's possible, including going on your damn suicide missions, just for one more breath. It's why I fight, and it's why they fight." The colonel grunts and stood up. He turned to walk away, but I called after him. "There's another reason why I fight my damnedest, sir." He spins round and looks at me, an eyebrow raised in question. "I ain't going to give you the fragging satisfaction of seeing me dead just yet." My lords, by now you're well aware our war on the Eastern Rim does not go well. We have already lost several colonies, and our fleets barely hold the Scourge at bay. Their numbers seemingly endless. Today I shall recount snippets of reports we've been able to recover, made by soldiers defending the planet Tartarus. By his watch, it was not yet noon, but the air was warm and clammy. Trooper Grouse of the 15th Imperial Commonwealth Army let his rifle swing loose on its harness strap. He wiped perspiration from his eyes and pushed the angular nose of a wrench bar into a rusted door lock. He paused and glanced around at the Major. The officer was tense, his rifle pulled up tight with the butt in his armpit ready to fire. Beads of sweat dotted his face as well, and it wasn't just the heat. Grouse shrugged. He didn't know exactly. He didn't know anything except what the Major had told him and the others of Y Company that morning. Get out to the pump station and find out why they hadn't checked in for 3 days. Grouse jiggled the wrench bar until the tool finally locked against a latch and then began to wind the ratchet so that the door released slowly. Down the low hallway behind him, the Major and 6 other men from Y Company hugged the walls and held their rifles ready. This was the job at its absolute worst, thought Grouse as he dropped the tool. Sneaking into a mystery and opening doors blind when you have no idea what in the name of the gods lay on the other side. But damn it, we're soldiers of the Imperium, and the 15th no less. Blood and flesh, men and women, born. Not created like the clones, and not built like the warforms. They reached the pump station early that morning, a cluster of machine barns and modular habitats. It stood at a confluence of irrigation channels, which watered the entire area and fed over a dozen farmsteads. The twin suns were low and cool, There had been no sign of life, not even the ever-present water birds that Grouse had seen everywhere in the marshes. And once they got inside with no answers to their voice or radio calls, it had been so damned hot and humid, like someone had set the environmental controls to tropical. The latch popped open and Grouse kicked the door inwards. It swung aside and the Major slid in, gun raised. Before them lay some kind of hydroponic workshop, with a high glass roof and metal support pillars rusting in the steamy air. Samples of crops and yield plants stood in labelled pots, trays and bins all around the walkways. Sappy moisture dripped from the transparent window panes above. The squad pushed into the hothouse, dripping with sweat in their uniforms. "What's this?" shouted Trooper Parnell. Grouse moved over to him, joined by the Major. Parnell gestured with disgust at a rack of culture trays set under some daylight lamps. Nutrient feeders sprayed intermittently, misting what was in the trays with a chemical wash. The Major cursed. The things in the trays looked like rotting globular fungi. Puffy, swollen, and the size of human heads, they pulsed irregularly. None of the men had any horticultural training, and none of them had been on the planet long enough to get a feel for the local flora, but they all knew this stuff wasn't right. "Burn it. Get a flamer in here and burn it all," the Major said, looking away from the obscene crop. Grouse was about to obey the command when they heard the burst of rifle fire, close by, 2 or 3 buildings away. 3 short, frantic bursts, then a longer salvo made by several guns on full auto, all firing together. The Y Company's radio splattered into life with an unintelligible series of cries and yells. First platoon turned and ran towards the gunfire, the Major at the front. Second platoon had been scouting the buildings to the left of them, and they were obviously in trouble. The Major's men burst into the chamber that had been second platoon's last recorded position. It was a hangar filled with several large wheeled agricultural vehicles, all parked up. The air was full of smoke from discharged weapons. There were 2 bodies on the floor, both men from second platoon. The bodies looked like they'd been dismembered by industrial combine harvesters. First platoon crept forward through the gloom, twitching for targets. Grouse found the headless corpse of another man from P2 leaning against the wheel arch of one of the tractors. Looking beyond the corpse, Grouse saw that the tractor was hitched to a big flatbed cargo truck with something large and strange lashed into it. Caked in mud, it looked remarkably similar to some kind of ship. Large, bulbous projections at the rear could only be propulsion units. But it was small, not large enough for anything more than a single human. And it made him sick to look at. It wasn't made of metal, it wasn't technology as he understood it. Frankly, it looked organic. Fleshy, pod-like, akin to the things that he had seen growing in the hothouse, but many, many times larger. Was this something the station crew had found out in the Delta and brought back for study? There was a cry and a burst of rifle fire behind him. Grouse spun around in time to see Trooper Parnell's body sailing across the chamber in a welter of blood and torn flesh. Something was moving through the gloom with terrifying speed. Something with 4 sets of deadly claws. It sliced through the Major at the waist in seconds. His body fell in 2, still firing. It was right on top of Grouse now. He howled in fear and opened fire. Trooper Grouse woke with a start. He was wet and slippery with night sweats and his head pounded. It had been 2 weeks since that nightmare in the pump station, a nightmare that only he and 3 others from Y Company had survived, and he couldn't shake it. He had been in battle before, he was a veteran, but the sheer horror of what he had seen, smelt and felt haunted his sleep, his waking mind. Grouse slid off his bunk steadily and pulled on a fresh uniform. It was daylight outside, and he could hear vehicles. He needed to get active if he was going to get over the trauma. He had to keep his mind and body occupied. Grouse went outside into the raw sunlight and watched the troop trucks and cargo machines rolling past in the mud. It was unseasonably warm, and rain hosed the streets. The modular roofs and towers of the Tartarus farm complex 132-5 glistened in the rain. The evacuation was already underway. As he crossed between growling heavy transports, Grouse tried to reassure himself. He had killed the thing, blown it apart with his rifle and 2 more like it. Then he and the survivors of the search detail had blown the pump station apart with explosives. They kept their heads. true to the famed discipline of the 15th Imperial Legion. They got their report back to the governor, and thanks to them, the planet-wide advisory had been issued. That had to make him feel better, didn't it? Grouse spotted Colonel Teagle supervising the loading of transports. On a stretch of hardpan behind a row of produce barns, the colonel looked flustered. Settlers thronged around him, begging for more of their valuable agri-machinery to be included on the evacuation manifest. Teagle broke off from them as he saw Grouse approach. "Bragging civilians," he muttered under his breath. "These people will be the death of me. I just want to get them and their loved ones and their basic possessions out of here. But they're all too worried about their damned cultivators and plows. I've half a mind to let you tell them what you saw." "And cause a mass panic, sir?" smiled Grouse sadly. "No, I guess not," the colonel responded. "I guess not." "Is there anything I can do?" Grouse asked. "I thought you were on bed rest. Medic's orders." "Aye, but it's making me crazy, sir. Give me something to do and it might take my mind off the things in my head." Colonel Teagle nodded. "Good man. We need drivers. Can you handle a truck?" "Pretty much," confirmed Grouse. Teagle confirmed his data slate and pointed to the dirt-caked 8-wheeler parked over by the side sheds. "Unit 177, she's yours. I want the main evacuation section out of here by 1500 hours. No excuses. Anything we haven't loaded up by then is staying, and that includes these bloody farmers. Uplift point is the Nactine Plain, 19 hours north of here. According to transmitted reports, we're expecting nearly 60 heavy transports to be waiting there to take us to the orbiting fleet. There are 8 other evac convoys like ours heading out from other farm collectives, but will pay to be there on time. We want to get our place, and if things turn nasty, we don't want them leaving without us." "What if it does come to a fight, sir?" asked Grouse. "Then we will show these alien freaks what true human fighting spirit is. There are 70,000 men from the 15th deployed planetside, not to mention the 30,000 garrison clone forces. General Khan has informed me that we have armor a few hours away from landing, and there's even talk of help from Earth. Perhaps even the super soldiers." "That's reassuring," said Grouse. "It may have been a little isolated outbreak we found at the pump station, but it pays to be prepared." "We are more than prepared now," said Teagle, a little darkly. "The alerts moved up a notch. Did nobody tell you? Off-world communications went down 5 hours ago. A shadow has fallen over us, Grouse. They're coming. They're definitely coming." Like beached Tianki, with screaming wide mouths, the vast bulk transports squatted on the dry, stony flats of the Nactine Plain. Disgorging rivers of armoured vehicles, clouds of churned pale dust reach even as high as the observation tower of the command ship, almost 300 meters above ground. General Khan could hear the clank and grumble of the Imperial tanks and fighting vehicles. He swept his binoculars around and then nodded in satisfaction. His men were deploying armour as fast as he ordered, faster perhaps, a good clean dispersal. The sky was clear blue and they had visibility to 10 kilometers. They wouldn't be caught napping. General Khan let the binoculars dangle against the crisp pressed front of his immaculate uniform. Beside him, on the ship's watch platform, 3 men manned the supervision consoles and communications arrays. A steady stream of radio traffic crackled in the background. One of the communications men approached him across the metal grille and handed the general a data slate. "Reports in from all the evacuation points, sir. Most of the collectives are underway, however Colonel Teagle from Complex 132-5 informs me they will be underway by 1500 hours. "Why so slow?" the general asked. "That's where the outbreak occurred, sir. I think the colonel is just being especially careful." The general nodded. He knew Teagle well and trusted him. The man would get the job done. "And this?" he asked, pointing to the data slate indicator marked 344-9. "They haven't embarked either, sir. Men from the clone regiments are there. I don't know what the holdup is." "Radio them. Find out. Tell them I'll skin them alive if they don't get moving soon." The air trembled with subsonic thruster power as a shadow passed over them. Another enormous bulk transport swung into land on the plain, breaking jets squirting blue flames. "That's the Adrienne," the comms officer said. "Right on time." Boots clanged up the observation tower ladder and Colonel Griezmann pulled himself up onto the platform. He was a thick-set man, wearing the crimson battle dress of the Armoured Corps proudly. He saluted General Con. Reporting in person, he said, "We're ready to move out. Where do you want us?" Con shook the colonel's hand and showed him the chart table. "We're playing watchdog right now. Some of my men in the Delta scared up some Pythorian 2 weeks ago and blew the whistle. From their reports, it looks like the locals found some sort of Pythorian scout drone or incursion probe and woke it up. We have no idea how long it's been sending its beacon, but since the shadow fell over us this morning, we can be sure it's been heard. I'd like you to take your tanks south. The evac convoy from the Delta Collective may need support if the trouble starts, and they're currently lagging. We will embark at once and meet them en route," Griezmann said, saluting, and turned away back down the ladder. "Good," muttered General Con, turning back to his communications officer. "Any joy with those clone idiots yet?" They had been in the farming complex 344-9 only 6 hours now, and Trooper Nink was already banging on that something bad was coming. The men of the Clone Legion were packing crates into a pack of heavy transports behind the maize silos. The twin sons, a matched pair, were coming up hard and bright. Sergeant Gallo tossed another crate up into Nink's hands and told him to shut the hell up. "Of course there's something bad coming, you moron. That's why we're here. That's why we were diverted 9 days ago with express orders to head for Tartarus. That's why we're busting our humps, getting a bunch of dirt scratchers away and onto the transports. Of course something bad is coming." Nink looked down at the sergeant as if the sergeant had just broken awful news about his wife. "Don't look at me like that," Gallo joked. He turned around to regard the other men of the clone regiments who had all paused their work. "Remember, we are clones. The unfaltering, innumerous clone legions. We only go to places like this because something bad is coming. I mean, the Lord Commander doesn't say, 'Oh, Tartarus, nothing bad is going to happen there. Let's deploy 30,000 of our brave clone warriors immediately,' does he? No, he damn well doesn't. We're here because we're bred for this, and people give thanks and kiss our spotty butts in gratitude. When something bad arrives, we are the rock that it breaks upon. Now get these crates stowed and tell yourselves this." Sergeant Gallo dropped his voice and grinned at his men. "We're from the 4th Clone Legion. We're killers to a man. We've been designed for it, bred for it, so whatever it is, it better be something really fragging bad, because when it gets here, it's going to find us, and we're going to kill it so many times it's going to wish it had never been born." There were cheers from the men. Even Nink cheered. The colonists trudging past the waiting trucks further down the evacuation convoy was silent, and they looked far too scared for Gallo's liking. Silently, he just wished he knew what was coming, what they were up against, and why they were here. Repeated signals from Nactine Plain, the comms officer Binal called to Gallo. "It's General Con himself, Sergeant. He wants to know why we're not moving." Gallo dropped a crate in contempt and turned to look at Binal. "We're not moving yet because Major Hunnell hasn't given the order. Tell him that." "I did, Sergeant. He wants to know why not." Wiping his sore, dusty palms, Gallo stalked across the sunlit compound. "Tell the General I'll ask the Major myself." Gallo entered the main hall of the farm complex, a dirty, zinc-panelled prefab that creaked in the heat. Air scrubbers chattered away. Gallo had seen the Major and 2 other officers disappear inside an hour before to discuss the final evacuation conditions with the farming complex selectmen. Major Gallo shouted and received no response. Gallo checked a few rooms. The place was empty. Unnerved, he called in a squad to help him search. 5 men, all in heavy battle dress, clattered through the entryway to join him. One of them had brought Gallo his rifle. "Spread out," he told them. Gallo and a trooper called Keane had the pleasure of finding the Major, 2 other officers, and the 6 farm selectmen, or what was left of them anyway. Reduced to blood and bone meal, they coated the floor and the walls of the cargo bay behind the hall. Trooper Keane promptly threw up and fell over the mass of bloody remains. Gallo tried to stammer into his comms link. Something tall and still that he had taken to be a roof support quivered and moved fast, so fragging fast, as a scything talon the size of a grown man lashed out of the shadows and ripped the vomiting Keane into ribbons of flesh and a spume of airborne blood. Gallo quickly found his legs, retreating, screaming and firing. Armoured plates knotted with whitish bone, iridescent green tendrils rising obscenely. The Pythorian ceased mimicking the colours of the wall and towered above him. Gallo wailed in fear. His shots punched into the dark bony plates of the monster's belly and chewed off some splinters of armour. Then he was running, the comms alive with panic. Gallo ran into two of his men and pulled them back down into cover against the prefab walls. He was trying to tell them what he had seen when 2 meters of talon sliced in through the wall and one of the troopers. The man's blood boiled out of his sagging mouth as the talon withdrew and slid free. Gallo threw himself away as another blade slammed through the wall and decapitated the other trooper, splitting his skull lengthways. It can see us. It can see us through the walls. It can see our heat. Gallo stood and ran. He reached the outside. The evacuation convoy was where he had left it, still not underway. Now, it would never get underway. Several trucks were overturned and 2 were on fire. Clone troopers running in all directions, firing into the smoke. Farmers and their families stampeded in panic. All around, bodies littered the ground, none remotely intact. Stumbling forward, Gallo found Nink. From the belly down, he was nothing but tatters. A bloody cloth, ropes of torn entrails and fragments of semi-articulated bone. But somehow, horribly, he was still alive. Nink clawed at Gallo, begging the sergeant to take him with him. Scratching at Gallo's leggings, Gallo brought up his rifle and shot what was left of Nink through the forehead. A mercy, he considered. He dropped into cover as a clutch of farmers tumbled by, wailing in terror. Something darted after them, taller than a man, its armoured body swept forwards by muscled, sinewy legs. The Pythorian's primary limbs, huge talons, ripped at the screaming settlers, disemboweling one even as it reached for another with its second pair of grasping arms. It moved so fast it corralled the settlers, and 2 more abominations just like it chased out of the oily smoke, all clashing fangs, hisses, and snapping of claws. Together their limbs thrashed and ploughed, ripping the frantic people into offal. Sergeant Gallo realised 2 things with ghastly clarity. He would never forget the screams of the slaughtered farmers and their families for as long as he lived, and he realised that that wasn't going to be for very long. He saw another Pythorian through the smoke, busy rendering a truck apart. Gallo ran, aiming for one of the laden trucks at the edge of the compound. His comms officer, Binal, lay dead by the rear wheels. Gallo knew it was Binal because the corpse still wore the comms gear, even though it didn't have a head anymore. He ripped the comms unit off Binal's body and clambered into the truck's cab. It took him a moment to find the emergency channel. 344-9. 344-9, he cried into the comms unit. Incursion, incursion, Pythorian incursion, repeat. There was no time to repeat the warning. The Pythorians were at the cab windows, on the bonnet, smashing the glass and reaching inside. Though unintelligible and more of a sound of pain than real words, Sergeant Gallo's last transmission was heard 600 kilometers away at the Nactine plane headquarters. The channel went dead and General Conn looked away, trying to avoid his officers' faces as he attempted to compose himself. He was about to signal Grisman's armoured brigade, which had just left the plane 40 minutes before on heading to reach 344-9. But the sky went abruptly black. Windborne spores began to fall down around them, burning flesh and thickening the air. The general ran to the ladder to get below as the first of the atmospheric toxins began killing Imperial troops. Ship landing lights came on automatically as the natural light died, illuminating streams of pelting spores like a black blizzard. Against the blackness high above, colossal shapes descended, gigantic winged organisms dispersing Pythorian creatures. Swarms of winged bat forms swelled out of them like fallen leaves blowing on the wind. They filled the air, shrieking, targeting individual men, leathery wings beating. The monsters executed steep, perilous dives, raking the ground beneath them with organic weapons that they clutched to their leathery torsos. Organic plasma fire rained down on them, shriveling and igniting men as they ran for cover. General Conn pulled out his sword and powered it up. He slashed at the Pythorian that was swooping down towards him. He split one in 2 and was immediately drenched in stinking ichor, causing him to fall. Rising from the ground, shaking, he saw how the corrosive spores were collapsing the superstructure of most of the landing ships. Things scattered forward through the burning darkness and confusion. There were thousands of them. The general continued to fight. He slashed at the alien filth that closed in around him. He cut the snout off a Pythorian bug and the forelimb of another. He was distracted by a liquid scream as his comms officer was hit by an acidic bioweapon and began to dissolve. A fat, bubbly slick punctuated by peeking bone, was all that remained of the man after 30 seconds. Then a beetle hit the general in the chest. He screamed in agony as it tore and burrowed into his chest, turning the contents of his body cavity into mush. The evac convoy 132-5 was 2 hours out from Nactine Plain when they saw the change in the weather patterns 100 kilometers ahead. A dark stain like a wash of thunderheads was bruising in the distance, widening with every passing moment. From the cab of Unit 177, Trooper Grouse saw the blue skies filled with dark, black-bellied clouds. His guts tightened. In the distance, the weather was being tormented in an ever-expanding radius. Frothing clouds whirled psionically like blast ripples from the ominous darkness. Drizzles of rain, thick with dingy fluids, and what seemed like seed pods pelted down. The 2-kilometer-long convoys switched on the headlights almost as one, and wipers began to beat rhythmically. "What the frag is this?" asked Trooper Richards, riding shotgun next to Grouse. Turn west, Colonel Teagle's voice rattled over the inter-vehicle comm system. The convoy, ungainly and slow to respond, shunted and churned as it tried to make the new heading. The air was sweet and hot. Grouse quickly realized it smelled like the pump station hothouse. 2 trucks overturned on the trackway, slumping into ruts as they tried to turn. Another 3 broke axles and were stranded. Teagle left them and their screaming occupants behind. "Nactine Plain has gone," he yelled into his comm system. "Our only hope is the Hive City at Malvo Heights." Grouse looked into his sat chart. Malvo Heights was 1,000 kilometers away. He knew they'd never reach it. He put his foot down anyway. Colonel Griezmann's armour was running hard from the filth storm that expanded ever outwards from Nactine Plain. All hope of reaching the evac convoy 344-9 was gone. All hope was gone. He turned his vehicles to meet the onrush. It was a slow business because the torrential rain had turned the dry, stony fields to mud, and tangles of vegetation were sprouting up out of the ground even as he watched. In the space of 15 minutes, a dry, arid upland had turned into a mossy, fern-filled swamp. Another hour it would be a thick, impenetrable jungle. Griezmann did not have an hour, and he would never live to see that floral conquest. His armoured column trained their tank guns into the sky and unleashed imperial fury into the dense packs of flying bugs that swooped down from the staining sky. Burning creatures dropped to the ground or were simply annihilated mid-flight. Then his tanks started to die. Advancing quickly, the Pythorians spat biological mines at them, blowing armoured units apart or melting them with acid and poison. Overwhelming floods of Pythorian bugs skittered forward out of the deluge, completely burying some vehicles under their rising numbers. The air pulsed with the psychic throbbing of the Pythorian hive mind. Tall and hideous Pythorian warriors advanced, biological weapons spitting acid as they came. Giant floating bugs glistened like great floating brains, their atrophied limbs clutched inwards, their great eyes ever focused, hovering over the swarms and flashing out lances of energy that blew tanks apart. The last thing Griezmann saw was the mouth of a giant cannon raised towards his vehicle. Evac Convoy 132-5 was running west, hard, engines roaring. They'd laboriously crossed a network of inter-farm trackways and finally made it to the main highway running east-west, the overland arterial route used by the produce trains every harvest season to ship grain to the Hive City at Malvo Heights. They were kicking up dust in a trail 4 kilometers long from the dry, white roadway, passing irrigation channels and wide flooded fields lined with rows of growing frames. The rain then caught up with them, washing out the dust and glistening the roadway until they were kicking up spray instead. South of them, the sky was pale and blue. North, black and oily, like pitch. A swelling, expanding bolus of dark cloud that blotted out the light. Trooper Richards was rechecking his rifle's drum magazine, and keeping one hand on the steering wheel, Grouse pulled out his pistol and tossed it to Richards. "Check it," he ordered. "My rifle as well." The truck's wipers were thumping hard, and wind blew spray up over the road. Grouse tried not to notice the wriggling black bugs that were hitting the windshield and coagulating like pus in his wipers. Through the driving rain, he saw the braking lights of the truck in front of him come on suddenly, and slammed on his own brakes. Rig 177 slid violently from side to side on the wet road. Richards cried out, and Grouse held the wheel tightly, trying to prevent his truck from rolling. They stopped hard, clipping the rear bars of the truck ahead. The intercom sparked into life with crackling shouts. Grouse opened his door, about to get out, peering ahead to try and identify the obstruction, when something came off the back of the truck in front. A man's head, followed by a Pythorian creature, landing on the bonnet of 177, denting the metal. It crouched there for what was probably only a second, but felt like an eternity, the rain dribbling down over its smiling teeth. Richards threw Grouse's pistol and fired his rifle wildly. His salvo burst the Pythorian's neck open in a fountain of purple fluid as it crumpled onto the bonnet. Settlers were streaming back down the road past them in blind panic. The truck ahead started up again. Wheels spinning, it drove 10 meters and then plunged sideways off the road, rolling down into the waterbed. Grouse saw 4 more Pythorians scampering towards him out of the gloom. He stood on the throttle. 2 were crushed under the heavy truck wheels, and the other 2 were slammed away into the air after contact with the wheel arch. Richards was firing out of the cab window on full auto, shell cases tumbling down into the footwell. The convoy ahead was now moving, though several trucks were slewed off the road and one of them was burning. Grouse had to drop speed to inch past them. Something grotesque and grinning appeared at the cab window beside him, and he dropped forward, allowing Richards to blast it through the glass. A smaller vehicle drew level with them, matching their speed. It was one of the open short wheelbase escorts with twin-mounted railguns. Grouse waved the driver past and then fell in behind. A moment later, the guns were pounding a steady stream of fire. Grouse saw something big and iridescent explode under the hail of fire and collapse off the road. 177's wheels span in the Ica, adorning the tarmac, slick as they sped past. Behind them on the highway, the racing convoy was assailed by things that pulled up out of the fields and irrigation channels. The escort vehicles ran alongside the transports, raking the fields with fire. The Pythorians withered under the fire, splinters of armour and bloody flesh flying through the air as the guns found them. Countless Pythorian bugs were smashed under speeding wheels. A glimpse of hope entered Grouse's mind. He might get out of this. But then the truck behind him was hit by multiple bioprojectiles, sending it spinning out of control, flying off the road and exploding into a drainage canal. Biological mines drifted down onto the highway, great mortar-like bugs pumping them out rhythmically, blowing 2 of the fast-moving transports into nothing but fragments. The convoy's heavy armour, 4 troop transports and half a dozen standard pattern annihilator tanks were lagging badly, and found themselves cut off from the fleeing convoy elements. 2 of the transports were quickly overran, covered by a swarm of fleshy bugs. The transports were opened like seed cases. The other 2 transports came to a halt, rotated their turrets and began pounding at the wave of obscenities that rippled into the convoy. The crews knew they were as good as dead, but Imperial discipline made them sell their lives as dearly as they could. Spitting bioplasma destroyed one tank. The other was struck by some sort of energized flash that looked like green lightning, and it blew apart as its munitions ignited. Another transport tried to turn and was thrown end over end, torn tracks flying into the air. Corrosive mines reduced another to tar and semi-solid lumps of steaming metal. Standing at the back of a speeding escort, Colonel Teagle manned the railguns himself. Searing, frenzied red tendrils of fire had just turned his main gunner inside out. He swung the heavy railgun on its mount, squeezing the firing stud, unleashing heavy streams of fire across the road in front of him. He was drenched in rain, and there was something in his mouth, something crawling on his skin. Necrotic spores coated him, breaking him down, eating his flesh. By the time his driver fell to a barbed round and spun the vehicle into a transport's back wheels, there was nothing of Colonel Teagle left but some articulated bones dragging from the railgun's grip. 10 kilometers on now, and out of the irrigated farmland and into the lowland below, Evac 132-5 found there was no going forwards. The roadway had become jungle, and the black weeping sky had utterly overtaken what remained of the column. The tide of horror was upon them. Trooper Richards was blasting from the cab window with his rifle. Grouse firing out of the other side. There was no shifting the truck now. Thick vines, creepers and other fast-growing plantoids mashed the axles and ruptured the tyres. "Look, look!" cried Richards. There were dots in the sky. Burning dots. The light slowly resolved itself into the shape of drop pods, flaring in atmospheric entry. A dozen, 2 dozen, now 3. The first pods hit the ground, burning and tearing through the cushion of foliage. Grouse saw what clambered out. Super soldiers. These were not regular men, they were genetically enhanced, manufactured on Earth, and given humanity's best equipment. Their reputations were legendary. Where they fought, the alien died. They did not lose. These mighty heroes had come to save him, as they promised. They had come despite the odds. The giant armoured warriors, humanity's finest, deployed from their pods, firing as the doors exploded outwards, blasting with heavy weapons. They carried flamethrowers and plasma rifles. Pythorians exploded all around them, beneath their withering firepower, flames burning the stinking plant growth away. Pythorians were blown apart, ruptured out of the sky, disintegrated by plasma. Grouse watched in sheer awe. One of the mighty warriors charged the Pythorian beasts head-on, jumping at it, grabbing it with its armoured hands and tearing it in two. Purple ichor exploding all over him. Another shouldered a rocket launcher, sending an explosive into a Pythorian warrior, blowing it apart into specks of biomatter. Grouse leapt from the truck's cab and ran into the fray, his rifle blasting. Men and women from the convoy followed him, freshly energized by the assault of the super soldiers. Grouse cut down a leaping Pythorian mid-air, blowing it apart in fury. He watched 4 super soldiers cripple and kill another Pythorian warrior. We could live yet, he thought triumphantly. He heard a screeching behind him and turned to face the horror of a gigantic Pythorian beast charging. This thing had almost no neck and was just a giant mass of solid bone and armour. 4 gigantic blades clicking, venom flying from the cutting limbs. Richards tried to run, but too slow, he became nothing more than a shower of meat. A super soldier, 2 of them, hit the monstrosity from the left side with heavy rifle fire, and as it turned, another vaporized its head with a plasma round. But that wasn't enough, its scything blades still whickering lethally as it toppled, decapitating them both in its death throe. Grouse fell to his knees. He honestly didn't think it possible that one of these warriors could die. They seemed to him invulnerable, the best humanity had to offer. But it was true. He looked down at the fallen, splintered helm of one of the super soldiers, the glassy, dull, dead face peering out of it. And as he looked away, he saw another super soldier ripped apart by a giant Pythorian. Another fell to a snake-like beast, impaling him into the ground and ripping open his armour with its fanged mouth. Then Grouse experienced perhaps the worst sight of all, the most unmanning thing his eyes had ever witnessed. 4 super soldiers were falling back, simply overwhelmed. They scrambled through the treacherous matted growth trying to find cover. A floating beast shimmered after them, its grey eye fixed upon them, spitting bolts of energized death. They turned, fired and ran, to no avail. A bolt of green lightning caught one, exploding him in a shower of flesh and armour. Another headed left and ran onto the scything talons of a Pythorian warrior. Another was stunned by a glancing blast and was swiftly torn apart by Pythorian bugs. The last soldier made it another 20 meters before the relentless floating bug struck him and his armoured form exploded with a vicious stab of green energy. Grouse couldn't believe what he was seeing. In the first 20 minutes from the drop, the super soldiers had cut a hole in the alien assault. They had punished them cruelly. But in the last 5 minutes, they were being annihilated. A biological mind dissolved a man in a spray of foul, steaming acid, leaving only a pool of slime as the soldier was rendered down into a greasy soup. Grouse caught the shape of the queen advancing through the flaming greenery, slaughtering soldiers with its vicious talons. He saw vast, obscene shapes of biotitans, as big as Cybrex warforms, larger perhaps, lurching forward in the distant smog. The last super soldier died 39 minutes after the first had clambered out from his drop pod. The convoy was ablaze, the parts of it that weren't shredded or swarmed over. Trooper Grouse dropped into a foxhole, feeling the undergrowth flourish and twist around him. His body was crawling with Pythorian infection. All he could hear was chattering. He could feel his flesh slowly dissolving, and he was becoming weaker and weaker. Trooper Grouse made peace with his long-dead parents, with Earth, beloved and distant, praying it would never suffer this horrific fate. He put the snout of his rifle into his open mouth. My lords, I bring news from the Eastern Front regarding the war with the Pythorian Scourge. Operation Nostramo has been executed successfully. All objectives have been achieved. I shall recount the reports of the operation. Major Solus paced up and down the corridor outside command headquarters. He had been waiting there for over 2 hours, and he wished he was on the other side of the door. Suddenly, the doors flew open, and a tall, stocky, well-kept man exited the room, grinning broadly. Did they go for it? Solus asked hesitantly. The man stood smirking. Well, James, did they go for it? James nodded. They went for it. Although in about 3 weeks, I'm going to be sure you're wishing they hadn't. Awful lot riding on this, Solus, and I've backed you. Hope for humanity's sake you're right about this one. Major Solus was part of an elite group of humanity's military division. Some referred to them as spooks, but their official designation was Unit 377. It was not common knowledge, but humanity was losing the war with the Pythorian Scourge. The Scourge were unlike any threat they had ever faced. The Commonwealth, humanity, had been through a lot of pain in the few hundred years or so since they achieved faster-than-light travel. First contact wars were plentiful, and the campaign against the Blorg lasted decades. However, nothing had prepared them for the savagery of the Scourge. They came out of literally nowhere, another galaxy no less, their numbers seemingly endless, ferociousness unmatched. Perhaps worst of all, they didn't fight for honour, conquest or territory. They just fought to consume everything, like they're here to wipe out every single living thing in the galaxy, and they'll never stop until that's complete. Multiple planets had already fallen to the Pythorians. Olympus, Tartarus, and Deliverance had barely held. Thousands of ships and millions, perhaps billions of men and women had been lost. It had to end. Humanity's neighbours had offered assistance. The Blorg, with their naive xenophilic ways, pushing for research agreements, migration treaties, and even requesting open borders for military assistance. You wonder if they forget our parents and grandparents fought to purge their globular alien bodies from the galaxy. Other calls for cooperation came in. The filthy necroid race known as Atem Losun, and a small unit of machines referring to themselves only as the Great Defenders, as if we could consider any arrangement with any of them. If humanity was to survive, it would do so alone. Victory through the resolve of humanity's finest was the only way, and in such dark times, men and women stand and make themselves counted. Major Solus was one such man. Unit 377 had been monitoring Pythorian-occupied space since the bug's first arrival in the Milky Way. After all, they had access to the marvelous Sentry Array in the Ultima Vigilis system. It was originally thought the Pythorian operated like any other hive mind, equal participants with a singular goal. However, in analysing previous military engagements, a pattern emerged, and it became clear that the Pythorians had a hierarchical structure. Effectively, the larger the bug, the higher up the food chain it was. This was the case not just with the ground troops, ranging from the little bugs to the queens, but their bioships as well, which were effectively just larger Pythorians. Unit 377 scans had picked up the largest Pythorian fragger of all. This thing was units of magnitude larger than the rest of their ships. Not only was it massive, but it also seemed to be the source of generations of new Pythorian bioships. This thing was the queen of the entire hive. The queen had situated itself in a system with very little access, a single hyperlane highway at the edge of the galaxy, and of course it was incredibly well protected. Within this system was the single, and now barren world. The queen was currently situated on this dead world, and it was being supplied with great nutrient arc vessels, allowing it to produce more and more offspring. Countless Pythorian swarms lay between it and anything humanity could muster. Getting to it would be nigh impossible, or so Solus had thought. The plan was simple enough. A recent discovery concerning the Curators, and a microorganism bioweapon capable of vast biological destruction, had been found on the western borders of the Empire by a science vessel crewed by Drs. Gates and Chase. Solus had read the report, and upon return to Earth used his privilege to immediately take possession of the organism. He found it could, with some minor alterations to its RNA, be used to target Pythorians specifically. Of course, He had no live subjects to test it upon, but it ate through dead tissue faster than his mother-in-law at Christmas. Thus, Solus took his findings to James, his commanding officer. Colonel James was a practical man, often jovial, but when it came to it, he would lay his life down for the cause. Between them, they hatched a plan: use the microorganism weapon on the Pythorian Queen. If their ships acted anything like their ground troops, the loss of the Queen would cause immense disruption in the Pythorian neural net. They would become confused, disorientated, and easy to pick off. Kill the Queen, win the war. And that was how Major Solus found himself with Colonel James aboard the brand new frigate Blackbird, accompanied by a crack team of Navy personnel and no less than 12 super soldiers. The Blackbird had been commissioned long before this mission was ever dreamt up. She was optimized for solo reconnaissance missions deep within unstable regions of space, using state-of-the-art stealth technology. She also came equipped with a wonderful psionic jump drive, supplied to us at great pains from the Curators after lengthy negotiations with the High Lords of Earth in exchange for information found by Doctors Gates and Chase regarding their origins. The Blackbird was the perfect ship for this mission. Solus, James, and the team would jump the Blackbird in system, thus avoiding much of the Pythorian defenders. Stealth systems engaged, they would approach the planet, infiltrate it, and set charges to disperse the microorganism weapon in range of the Queen, return to the ship, and hopefully escape. The Blackbird was not alone, however. A diversion would be required to draw the Pythorian fleets away from their protective duties. Thus, in the time since James had taken their plan to the High Lords of Earth, the largest galactic fleet ever witnessed by the Commonwealth was being assembled. Every ship in the Commonwealth was pulled. Even several Merc fleets had been purchased at great expense. This plan had to work. If it failed, there would be nothing left save a few orbital stations to hold back the tide of the Scourge. Strike Force Alpha, Fleet Log, Captain Tiberius aboard the battleship Varus. The diversion begins. Frag this. What are these things? We are but flies attacking wildebeest. Every attack we make is swept aside. Gigantic craft like disgusting sea-dwelling monsters with curled shells and questing tentacles, surrounded by countless tiny darting shapeless things that I cannot find the words to describe. Each volley of torpedoes we fire is intercepted by the swarms of these creatures. Our weapon decks are flooded with them. Entire squadrons of strike craft are being destroyed in a heartbeat. Our tachyon lancers tear gaping wounds in their armoured hides, but we cannot bring enough fire on any one bioship to count. I saw the cruiser Sanctity pass too close to one of the hulking biocraft. It was ensnared by some loathsome organ that dragged the ship into the embrace of 1,000 claws and scything blades. It broke the mighty vessel in two. For every one of the smaller craft we destroy, 100 times that number are vomited from the belly of the larger bioships. We must fall back. To die this way is no service to humanity. We are now committed on a perilous course of action. Lord Admiral Hood has ordered the fleet disengage and commence guerrilla protocols. We will attempt to draw the Pythorian fleet onto our orbital defense stations. Perhaps with the Pythorians spread out in system, we may be able to cause enough damage to halt the alien advance. The Hive fleet scatters before us. The ion cannons on the orbital stations burn through the alien vessels. Spread out, they're much more vulnerable to our righteous fire, and our tactical supremacy is now becoming clear. We have to give our fighters more time. Concentrate all firepower on the main Hive ship. It's almost ready to go. See how it spills its blood into space. Kill it. Kill it now. Full spread of torpedoes. There, you see it perish. Our strike craft delivered the final blow. Such will be the fate of all Pythorian invaders. The other ships, they drift now as if they cannot function without the guidance of the larger ships. We must strike while we have the advantage. Launch all remaining strike craft. We shall reap a bloody harvest this day. Hundreds of the Pythorian Scourge are dying without the main ship to direct their attacks. They fight in an uncoordinated manner and are easy meat for our gunners. The Pythorians are withdrawing, their Hive ships falling back before us. Orders have come through from Lord Admiral Hood to give pursuit and eradicate them. Though we are outnumbered, we cannot allow them to fall back and disrupt the Blackbird and her mission. We must prevail. Victory shall be ours. Major Solus Mission Log, Operation Nostromo. Remind me why we don't just drop several neutron bombs onto the planet, asked James, already knowing the answer. Wouldn't work, Solus responded quickly, having answered the same question 50 times in their short journey. Any shipside weapons fire will bring the entire swarm down on us, and there is no bomb of a large enough yield in the fleet that A, the Blackbird could carry and launch, and B, we could be certain will deliver a killing blow. It has to be this way, I'm afraid, James. Solus tilted his head at the super soldiers busying themselves with their loadouts. At least it's those boys that'll do the real dirty work. The 14 men had teleported planetside. The super soldiers in their enclosed armour were perfect for this mission. The mighty superhuman men encased in their mechanized armour were akin to walking tanks. Their armour came with rebreather apparatus, and their near godlike physiques would allow them to survive without air for an inhuman amount of time, should it come to it. James and Solus were not so lucky. Their unmodified physiques could not hope to control the mighty armour worn by the super soldiers. Instead, they fought in high-tech battlesuits, skin-tight and sealed, but offering far less protection. If their suits were punctured, they would suffocate in mere moments. "Let's get on with it," said James. "We're 5 clicks out." James slashed his sword through a Pythorian's midsection and kicked another's head in as it clawed its way towards him. Beside him, Solus's flamer seared a clutch of aliens as they attempted to scale their dead. James saw a brace of monsters charging towards them and shouted to Solus, "With me, Major." He dropped from his firing position and sprinted towards them, firing his pistol as he ran. The explosive shells blasted apart a handful of creatures, and he burst amongst the rest like a thunderbolt, slashing left and right with furious strokes of his sword. Aliens died by the score as the super soldiers joined them, smashing their way through the hissing bodies. Claws scraped at their armour, their speed blinding, but these warriors were the very best humanity had to offer, and none of the aliens' blows could halt them. The men felt ancestral hatred for these beasts course through their veins as they slew them. Solus ducked past James and poured a tongue of fire over the beasts with his flamer. Aliens screeched as the fire consumed them. More and more Pythorians were pouring in now, the small squad having lost the element of surprise. But they were so close. The Queen was a little over 500 meters away now. They could see it, a great writhing mound of flesh and bone, its mass weighing it down, unable to move due to its vastness. The super soldiers around them fought with all the skill and ferocity they were famed for, shrugging off blows that would have killed a normal man twice over, and fighting beyond the limits of courage and endurance. Then, the smaller beast parted, and a giant Pythorian with massive clawed arms stomped across the mass of dead aliens towards them. 3 meters tall, the warrior organism was all rippling armoured plates and glistening organs, layered beneath a bony exoskeleton coated with an encrusty layer of fatty tissue. Its jaw opened, letting loose a terrifying screech as its scythe-taloned arms raised up to strike. A drooling bioweapon spat a phlegmy wad of death towards the group. James dived aside, the sparkling slime blasting a huge crater of dirt where he had been standing. He sprang to his feet as the monster smashed its way towards them. He fired his rifle at the huge creature, blowing off chunks of its armour, but failing to stop its murderous progress. Solus bathed the creature in fire, the insulating fat on its bones sizzling and filling the air with a disgusting odour. Dozens of smaller bugs followed in its steps. James leapt to meet the monster, swinging his sword at its thorax. A bladed limb swept down, blocking the blow, as another slammed into his breastplate, sending him reeling back. He landed in a clump, his breastplate beginning to crack. A super soldier came in between him and the beast. The soldier charged, hacking his blade through its legs just above its giant hooves. The beast howled in pain, crashing to its knees and toppling over down onto the ground where it lay thrashing its clawed arms impotently. Solus fought the bugs back, as yet more and more poured towards them. "Colonel," bellowed Solus. No response came from James, still not moving. A super soldier leapt onto the buckling monster's back. The giant Pythorian beast struggled to right itself, but the man reversed the grip of his sword and drove the blade downwards through its skull. Instantly, its motion ceased, and the soldier roared as he ripped his blade free in an arc of black blood. He jumped from the monster's back as Solus and the rest of the men were busy slaying the suddenly dazed-looking bugs. They didn't give the disorientated creatures time to recover their wits, hacking them down without mercy. Solus and the men killed them without pity. Blades rose and fell, coating them in blood as they waded through alien gore. The battle around him receded until he could see nothing beyond the death that surrounded him. And just like that, it was done. There were no more bugs in sight for the moment. Solus moved over to check on James. He was dead, his armoured breastplate shattered by the Pythorian's mighty claw. Solus wasn't sure if he died on impact or suffocated, but there was nothing he could do. Thunderous footfalls shook Solus from his sorrow. He saw one of the super soldiers hurled through the air and the shadow of another gigantic monster rear up through the mist of corpses and blood. Larger than a battle tank, this beast shrieked with a rasping of plates deep in its shark-like maw. Its carapace was battered and cracked, alien blood pouring from numerous wounds punched through its body. Rearing up, it blocked the sun, and 4 massively clawed arms reached towards him. Then its jaw opened wider still, and an emerald green torrent of bioplasmatic fire vomited from inside it. Solus threw up his arms to ward off the energized plasma, but the force of the alien's discharge smashed him to the ground. He fought to stand, the hissing green ichor coating his visor and rendering him blind. He lashed out with his sword, feeling it bite through alien flesh. The ground shook as the monster towered over him, and Solus felt the heat of its breath on his face. Solus scrambled backwards, desperately wiping bioplasma from his visor. He looked up and saw death in the black eyes of the Pythorian. They were black, lidless, and devoid of life. He felt a wall of corpses at his back, and he knew there was nowhere else to go. His sword arm came up, but he knew it was too late. Then a blistering streak flashed through his vision and struck the creature square in the center of its skull. A powerful shockwave buffeted Solus, and he felt bony shrapnel come down around him. As the echoes of the explosion faded, he looked up through a cloud of smoke at the massive organism and saw that its head had vanished, leaving nothing but a charred blood basin, oozing brain and skull fragments. The Pythorian swayed for a second, until its body registered the fact that it was dead and its knees buckled. The massive creature collapsed, and Solus rolled aside as it fell, the impact throwing up blood-streaked bioplasma. Thank the gods he had brought these fragging super soldiers along. Lord Admiral Hood, overall commander of humanity's diversion force. Personal log. My order to pursue the retreating Pythorians was not given lightly. Though the fleet under my command was vastly outnumbered, were I to permit the alien menace to escape, we would only have to face it again, and our primary objective remained: buy enough time for the Blackbird and her crew to kill the Queen. The fleet harried the Pythorians to the edge of humanity's space, giving them no respite from our weapons. I knew that only with constant pressure would we prevent the Pythorians from regrouping and destroying us. As we reached the outermost system of Commonwealth space, my staff warned me of an incoming fleet. It was approaching at great speed, but it was unclear whether it was another Pythorian fleet or a friendly. They could not say. I swear, the next few minutes that passed were the longest in my life. Then, a storm of torpedoes and a flood of laser fire heralded the arrival of Lord Admiral Dragneel's fleet, freshly returned from slaying the Void Beast Shard. Nearly 250 vessels led by Dragneel's Titan, the Scourge Dracorum, emerged from hyperspace. They were the anvil to my fleet's hammer. Caught between the two fleets, the fate of the Pythorians was sealed. But the alien neither knows or understands the concept of defeat and continued to fight on. In the first moments of battle, the cruiser Hermes and the battleship Gorgon were overwhelmed by swarms of monstrous creatures, such that they were completely obscured by their mass. Our experiences in fighting the Pythorian Scourge showed us the aliens needed the largest hive ships to function effectively. As such, I ordered all ships to concentrate their firepower on a tentacled leviathan that lurked in the center of the swarm. Our ships punched a hole in the Pythorian center, scattering them in all directions. Screens of smaller ships blocked the way, and though our losses were grievous, our vessels were finally able to fight their way through the massive hive ships and strike at the vile craft with every weapon that could be brought to bear. Caught in the crossfire of two fleets, the Pythorian were finally overcome, and after a brutal hour of constant bombardment, the remains of the Pythorian fleet were destroyed, and the battle won. In a triumphant procession, the two fleets began the journey back in system. As we neared the hyperlane exit, the fabric of space was torn aside, and a second Pythorian fleet emerged from hyperspace. Realizing that we could not outrun the Pythorians, Dragneel and I decided to commit to our last stand. We had to buy the Blackbird the time it needed. The previous Pythorian fleet had been weakened and trapped. This one was fresh and undamaged. The destruction wrought by the Pythorian was fearful. Our craft could not breach the solid wall of creatures that protected the hive ships. The enormous firepower of the Scourge Dracorum punched great holes in the Pythorian fleet. but for every hit that was scored, another Commonwealth vessel was overwhelmed and destroyed by the Hive ship's protectors. Our fleets simply could not bring sufficient weight of fire to destroy enough of the Hive ships to disrupt the Pythorian. Suddenly, the mighty Scourge Dracorum's engines flared, and it powered deep into the heart of the Pythorian mass. A fleet-wide communique sounded. "Attention all vessels. This is Lord Admiral McNeill. It is clear to me we cannot win this fight by utilising conventional methods of warfare. I order you all to disengage and withdraw immediately. The Scourge Dracorum shall be the fiery sword of retribution that ends this war. I repeat, disengage and pull away." Realising the Admiral's plans, the remaining captains pulled their vessels back. The Scourge Dracorum collided with the largest of the Pythorian craft, and as the beastly Hive ship's tentacles ensnared the vessel, McNeill triggered his jump drive engines. Space was torn asunder, and an uncontrolled hyperspace vortex erupted and engulfed the Hive fleet in its destructive embrace. The Pythorians were sucked into oblivion by the vortex, and when the storm died down, not a single Hive ship remained. The Scourge Dracorum was gone also. The people of the Commonwealth will mourn for 1,000 days in recognition of the Admiral's sacrifice, and his name should forever be remembered with reverence, along with the names of his crew, as true defenders of humanity. The battle had been won, but it had claimed nearly the entire human fleet. A small force of heavy cruisers remained to destroy any surviving bioships, while the rest of the fleet limped back towards Earth. We can only hope the Blackbird and her crew had been successful, lest the sacrifice had been for nothing. Major Solus mission log, Operation Nostromo. They were seconds away from their target now, and the horde of Scourge knew it. All that remained of the 14-man squad was Solus and 2 super soldiers. The remaining men either dead or missing beneath the tide of creatures assailing them. They were finally in their objective window. The bioweapon could be armed. The 2 super soldiers were being swarmed. Ammo having completely run dry, they were embroiled in a swirling melee. One was felled with a barb the size of a small tree being blasted through his chest. The remaining man was pulled apart by sheer overwhelming numbers of creatures. Major Solus finished arming the bioweapon dispersal device just as his last super soldier escort fell. He used his last remaining moments to look up towards the starry-filled sky and grinned. We were never coming home from this one, were we, James? The Blackbird in orbit with its stealth systems fully active recorded the detonation from space. Within minutes, the microbiome swarm was tearing through Pythorian flesh and bone, dissolving the creatures into their elemental parts. The primary objective had been achieved. Let us hope there is still an Earth to go back to. And so, my lords, I am able to announce the Pythorians have been defeated. The death of the Pythorian Hive Queen did as we anticipated. Any remaining splinter fleets have been identified and put down. No more effort than what we would expend dealing with rogue pirates. They float, like jellyfish. Their brains are empty and they have no purpose. In fact, we have secured multiple live samples with relative ease. The science teams aboard the Nexus are quivering with anticipation to see what they can achieve with such specimens. However, my lords, this war has proved incredibly costly, and not just to our economy. The sacrifice of our people has been great. Mighty heroes have fallen, their memories must be honoured. I am in the process of commissioning the greatest procession our empire has ever seen. This victory must be celebrated, across all of our worlds. Morale demands it. Earth will be seen as a shining beacon of humanity's strength, and the rest of the galaxy will see it as such. The Galactic Council cannot ignore us anymore, my lords. We will demand a seat at the table, and if they refuse, we shall take it by force.